the inner life.
Question that comes up this week is,
how can we see the God or spirit or this universal presence outpictured as us?
Can you see God within you?
Sometimes I look in the mirror or the proverbial mirror, I look kind of within my own self and I'm like, how in the world
can I see God in me? Hello. I am Reverend Dan. We are Soul Evolution Collaborative, and this is Truth Be Told, our weekly series of inspiration and upliftment, and usually at least a little bit of fun. So thank you for tuning in tonight. We are in a new month, so we have a new theme this year. We are taking this adventure into this idea of living everyday wonder, and this month we are taking a look at the inner life, that which moves through us and creates this life around us. And by taking a look inward, we're going to check out how that changes our perspective outward. And so this week we are asking the question, can I see the God in me? And taking a look at all the questions that brings up, because I think it probably brings up a whole lot more questions, at least for me, than it answers. So we have a great episode coming up tonight with a whole lot to say, because imagine three ministers might have a lot to say about what God is. So sit back, relax, and enjoy Truth Be Told. For 2022, we are exploring this idea of everyday wonder. And for the month of February, we are looking at this inner life. We're taking an inward look at ourselves and our spirituality. And the question that comes up this week is, can I see God in me? And I absolutely love this question because it is one of those questions that raises way more questions than it does actual answers. And the answer that comes up is completely personal. There's no right or wrong answer. And there is so much room for personal growth and exploration here. And so when we ask, can I see God in me? Can I personally, do I see God within me? I think, one, we have to acknowledge that this is a huge step for many of us. This is a huge jump, a leap, in fact, for many of us, for anyone who was not born into this way of thinking, for most people, in fact, in the Western world, most people in the United States and similar societies that have a primarily Christian or Judeo-Christian God. God is something outside of yourself. God is something far off in a distant place that places judgment and makes decisions for you. And so to go from that worldview, that perspective, that belief system to, can I see God in me? That is a huge jump. And it may be one that we really want to take. It may be a jump or a leap that we are looking to take, and yet those beliefs are so deeply seated in the worldview of most of our society that it can be a challenge. It can be a real challenge to take that jump from God is outside of me, God is a person, God is a being, God is something out there that is separate from me and judges and doles out punishments and makes decisions, but also cares for and provides grace. From that to God is within me. And at this point, once we start to make that jump, and this is not a jump that we just take and poof, we land on the other side. I think that this is something that we are kind of unpacking for potentially a long time, years. These ideas that just, we don't even know they're there. So deeply seated in our belief system around that idea of the world as separate, God as separate, as this outside father figure, creator, caretaker, provider. But once we get to that point of even just having started that journey, then we have to look at the languaging around this. Languaging is so important, especially in this kind of newer way of thinking, or this way of thinking that is new to so many of us. Language is so important, and more important in places where it wasn't important before. It was not important before to the language we used around how we said God out there, right? God. We could describe that in so many ways, and it didn't really matter. But here, now, in this new way, how we describe God is really important. And how we ask this question, can I see God in me? The language we use around that is really important because, well, how am I defining God? The idea of can I see God in me kind of insinuates that there is an outside God that I am trying to find through an inward perspective. And that is probably one of the steps in unpacking this outside God. But we have to take that further, because the God of new thought, the God of universal principle, the God of consciousness, is not that separate being. And so to unpack all of the language and all of the beliefs around that can take a while. And so that may be step one, can I see God in me? But can I take that a step further? And the question that comes up is, at least for me, can I see me as God? Oh, and all of the worthiness questions and thoughts and fears come up. Oh, I can't call myself God? Yikes. And I know I'm not alone in this, that there are so many beliefs and fears and feelings and thoughts that come up around that. But even that is still based in needing to unpack that old idea of God out there. Because there can be only one God, and it is the almighty, all-powerful white man in the throne in the clouds, right? That's the God out there. And so for me to ask, can I see me as God? Deep breath. Oh. Right? And to breathe through that old baggage, that old idea around, oh, right, even that is still the idea of God out there. All right. Okay. I think I can move through that, right? I think we can move through that idea. And so what's next? If I can see me as God, well, can I see me as the all that there is? And all of a sudden there's this weight lifted, and there is this whole new perspective. Because we live in a society that has such a, I was going to say clear definition. It's not clear at all, but we have such a definitive version of what God means for this society. And it leaves a lot of room for personal imagery, but the vision of God is so distinct in this Judeo-Christian society that it takes so much work, personal inward work, to move through that and look at this idea, can I see God in me? Move through that further, can I see myself as God? Further into, can I break down all division and all actual sense of separation to see that that thing that has created everything is actually that thing within me, because that thing within me is not actually separate from. The mind that created all is the same mind that I use. There's not separate minds. There's not a piece of the mind. I don't have a slice of a pie. My mind is the mind. The mind is my mind. The mind is thinking, all of us, we are all thinking the mind and being thought by the mind. It is all one activity. So yeah, I can see God in me. And then we can kind of come all the way back around to that question. And having redefined some of that language, having loosened some of those belief systems. But it's really important that we have that conversation, even if it's just with ourselves, that we have that conversation about what that really means, what it feels like. and what it's like to live from a place of knowing that, of feeling that, of believing that. Yeah, I can see God as me, as you, as each one of us, because that's really the all that there is. There is nothing else.
I like
Bye.
pie. I like how and this whole kind of week I've been kind of mulling over this idea, and it never really, and I guess that's why it's so good to have like three of us talking about this in our own kind of voice. Even the asking the question, can I see God in me? It is a dualistic sort of question, isn't it?
Yeah, in a way.
That language is important, and I think sometimes we lose sight of that. Just because it is important, how we frame things, how we say things, how we express these principles. I think that it's important never to take for granted how important language is, and how important it is to frame these principles in a way that is clear. It just in my mind, I hadn't thought about that. For me, it was like, oh well, of course. I kind of got to the end of it. When I started at the end, basically, I didn't really think about the language of "Can I see God in me?" Being dualistic, or that outside God. But yeah, we can kind of fall into that if we don't watch it. So that was what struck me, just the importance of language. Yeah. Not only in like how we express to others, but for me, it's like the more I say things out loud, those same ideas just get ruminated in my head. And so then I start following the same things I'm saying, so it's like, it's really important, not only in expression of the principles outside of us, but for our own internal monologue, because I think it does move and shift how we see things. And so we have to be really, really, introspective and mindful of those things, and, evaluate, how we're have that own dialogue and how that kind of out pictures in the world too.
Yeah. And I think it can be tricky too, because, especially for anyone who is newer to the teaching or doesn't feel as comfortable with it yet. It's easy to get caught up in, I hope I'm saying this right, or I don't want to say this wrong, or I don't want to use the wrong, so it's easy to kind of like, you're in that, like, we want to be really intentional with our language, and yet also give ourselves enough wiggle room to like not get caught up in, beating ourselves up about it, or get stuck, we get like paralyzed in like, I don't want to say the wrong thing. So we could have a whole series on language, but
maybe we will.
Yeah, I think it's really, and maybe we will. Yeah. I think it's really important to be super intentional when we're redefining things for ourselves.
Yeah.
And at the same time, maybe not worry about language so much when we are kind of exploring our way in and through this kind of new thing. It's really only important when, like you said, like when we are trying to define for ourselves,
right?
To not just pick up language without really kind of chewing on it a little bit. But it kind of taken my own journey, my own thought process through, feeling my way through, that question in particular, that version of this question was like, that kind of brought up some thoughts of like, back when, back when I first, started this journey, it was like, what did I think about that then? Oh, wow. Yeah. So it is, I enjoy it, the chewing on the language a little bit, anyway, I'll save that all for when we do that as a separate series.
Sounds good.
Yeah. All right. Are we moving on?
Moving on.
I think we're keeping it short tonight. We got a lot to say in these videos.
So on this new monthly theme, we're going to look at the inner life. And this week, we are focusing on the divine within. Can you see God within you? Again, whatever word you want to use to say that something bigger within you. So what my mind went to first was a poem by Christian Larson, and I referred to this many times in my life for strength and inspiration. And there's 2 lines. If you want to see the whole poem, just Google the Optimist Creed. But the first line is that I will spend so much time improving myself that I have no time left for criticizing others. And the second line is that I will be so strong that nothing or nobody can disturb my peace of mind. One thing that comes up as a criticism of personal transformation, spiritual work like this, is people say, how can you say something like that to somebody who's living in an absolute hell, who has been through all kinds of horrific things or whatever their state is? And I understand that. And what I want to say is, one, it's never my place to tell anybody what they should think or how they should feel or act. This is all really directed at myself. This is my own personal work. And if somehow what I say helps somebody else, then that's icing on the cake. But please take what I say with a grain of salt, because I come from a very fortunate background. I'm very lucky to have not had to endure much of the hardships that others do. Now, that being said, I want to draw our attention to a couple of people who have drawn on that thing within to get through horrific situations. The first one, Nelson Mandela. After having spent 27 years in prison unfairly while he fought apartheid in South Africa, he came out and expressed that he drew on something deeper within him, and he drew his attention to it every single day, because he knew that the second he didn't, that he did not draw upon something bigger and bring his attention to it, he would have died. The second 2 people together is Elie Wiesel and Viktor Frankl. They survived Nazi concentration camps, and it was the same idea. They saw death all around them. People that just gave up, lost the will to live and died. Other people, being murdered every single day. And they knew that they had to draw on something bigger in order to try to get through it, finding meaning each and every day, one day at a time. Now, another criticism that comes up of words like these is other people say, okay, so it worked for them, like they were amazing. But what about all the other people that tried these ideas and tried, focusing within, and they didn't make it? They died or they got killed. I want to posit that perhaps those suffered a little less than the other people that had lost that will, that weren't drawn from something within. There's a Buddhist saying that says, in life, pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional, which comes down to drawing on something bigger than ourselves. We see this happen with inmates on death row. They know that the end's coming, and most of them are terrified. But there's some that have this epiphany. Sometimes it's spontaneous, sometimes they happen to meet a teacher or find a book. But they learn to connect that there's something bigger within them, a place that they can essentially go within and just remind themselves to get through this moment and get through the next moment, that they come to this place of acceptance and they suffer those last days less than others. So this is all powerful stuff, and it actually changes the brain just to contemplate the idea of God, to contemplate the idea of the universe as this life force working through us. You don't even have to believe, but just the act of contemplating it causes physical, measurable change in our brains that adds to our resilience, adds to our emotional stabilization, to all of these things that give us the strength and the skills to get through really challenging places. So again, take it all with a grain of salt. This is me and my personal work, and I've got a long ways to go. And each day that I do this, every time I remember to go within, contemplate, to draw upon it when I'm in a tough spot, that I'm having emotional distress, and just remind myself, I can get through this next moment. I can get through today. Tomorrow's a new thing. Always drawing on that thing within. Can you see that within you? We have ultimate power within ourselves, and it's ours for the taking, but we have to make that intention to do that.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
I like how you, we talk about that thing within that we're individualized expressions, and we hear this a lot in like spiritual communities. But the way the way you just posited the whole thing was like, yes, that we are this individualized expression. We have this stuff in us, and we can actually use that. We can actually use that which is us as that springboard. So I like how, because I think sometimes it seems like a simple concept, but I think sometimes we say it, and then it's like, oh wait, I can actually use that thing that I have. It's like finding a tool in your pocket that you didn't know you had. You're like, oh, thank God, that's what I was looking for. And then actually using it. So I like how you kind of brought that to the surface. At least that's what came up for me, is that these aren't just principles, and this is not just an understanding that we stick in our back pocket and then go walking down the sidewalk, but instead we actually can use that to actually, like Ernest said, there's a power in the universe that is greater than us, and we can use it. And so like that's what kind of was going through my head when you were talking.
Right. And we don't have to either, like, I use the examples of Nelson Mandela and then, Elie Wiesel, Viktor Frankl. We don't have to get into that, serious of a situation to do it. Just there's times, in my own personal life when stuff comes up and I find myself, struggling with whatever emotion or whatever things going on. That's the perfect time. Like, we don't have to have some horrific situation to use it. Like, we can use it even with just the slightest discomfort, just that pause, like, okay, let me contemplate something. Let me just take myself outside of it for a second and just let that thing be there. Let me just pause and look within. And it's amazing how, it can shift just the little things. Sometimes I think we kind of get hung up, like, I'll use it when, it gets bad enough.
Right. Yeah. Right.
We don't have to wait.
Yeah. And I also just really appreciate, I don't think we say enough or note enough. We're not here to tell anyone what they should do or think or believe. And I think it's easy enough in a teaching like this to draw conclusions kind of preemptively, that if someone finds themselves in some horrific situation, that they did something wrong, right? And actually that too is as out of that idea of that old dualistic God out there, like, something bad happened to you, well, that's punishment because you clearly did something wrong,
right?
And I think it's really important to note, like, even if something traumatic happens to anyone, that doesn't mean that they didn't do something. Like, that doesn't mean they did something to cause that. It doesn't mean that they didn't do something that they should have, right? It doesn't mean like you didn't create that intentionally to happen. You didn't have that happen, right? Like, there is this grace here still that I don't think we get to talk about enough, that life is still life, and the subconscious is still the subconscious, and thoughts are still out there, beliefs are still out there, for things that we would rather not have happen to anyone, especially ourselves or anyone we know. So I just appreciate you bringing that up, and the idea that in these examples that you use, that those people utilize that time as kind of the catalyst for, okay, what can I know right now to have something different happen? And I think that's a really big and important point. When can we know ourselves as the all that there is right now? That's actually the only time, right? I mean, I think that's kind of what you were saying. Like, right now is the only time I can know me as all that there is.
Yeah. Yep. Good stuff.
It is.
Well, we're not through yet, so just sit tight for just a moment. We want to thank everybody for all the support. I think sometimes we forget to just shout out the thank yous for the people that have, been sending their financial support for us. We deeply appreciate that. And then, the comments, the shares, the things that people get a hold of us about. It's all part of the support that we receive. So thank you everybody for that. Now, if you resonate with these ideas and you're not already involved with Soul Evolution Collaborative, give it a consideration. Come join us on Thursday night for the gathering. It's free. We just get together on Zoom and we discuss these ideas in greater depth. We do it for about an hour from our own personal individual perspectives. We have a great, group of minds that come together to just delve deeper into these subjects. And that's really where our spiritual work really gets, takes hold, is when we learn to express what we're feeling, learn to ask, questions where we might have confusion. If we don't ever get a chance to express it, we think we have our ideas of what's going on, but until you really look at it deeply and express it, you don't cement it in. So we do on Thursday nights, the gathering at 7:00. Come join us for that. Look out for us on Sundays for Strip Down Sunday, where we unchurch your church experience, nothing but the message. We do that on Facebook and YouTube live on 12:30 Eastern time on Sundays. We have more stuffs in the works and more things in the works. And who knows where we're going next. It's been a fun ride. So come check us out. SoulEvolutionCollaborative.org is every bit of information that you need to find out more about us. Go there, sign up for the newsletter, sign up, for Rev Ryan's blogs, sign up for the gathering, and we hope to see more of you there. Now let's get back to Truth Be Told.
So when we talk about how we can see this spirit in us, how can we see the God or spirit or this universal presence outpictured as us? Now, I don't know about you, but for me, sometimes that's a pretty hard pill to swallow. Sometimes I look in the mirror, or the proverbial mirror, I look kind of within my own self, and I'm like, how in the world can all that stuff, all the worries and the anxieties and all sorts of things, being human, how in the world can all of that be the divine? But it is. That one thing that's going on, that one thing that's back of all things, that divine presence, that divine spirit, whatever you want to call it, it is living, breathing in us, as us, each and every day. And so that doesn't mean just the good parts. I think sometimes I get tripped up, and I'm probably not the only one that gets tripped up on this, it's really easy for me to see the divine in me when I am showing up the way I want to show up, when I'm feeling good, I'm feeling peppy, and everything is going great, then yeah, absolutely, I am the divine expression of the one. But the challenge is, those days when you want to get back in bed or pull the covers over your head, or you've fallen down the steps, or you forgot to send an email, or, the list goes on and on, then in those times, sometimes it's hard to see I am an expression of that one thing, that divine presence that is back of all things. And so those are the times that it's hard to see that. But I'd like to posit that we can see the divine in both of those things. And in essence, that's truly the only way that we can do it. Because we know that this universal presence, this spirit, is wholeness. And I know we have talked about wholeness a lot, but I think honestly, wholeness is the key. If we can crack that, if we can actually tap into understanding what that means, then everything else falls in place, honestly. When we can understand that it's everything, that it doesn't matter if it's a good day or a bad day, or we have a clean haircut, or we have crazy hair, but all of that is the expression of the divine. It is all a part of that. And when we can see that, when we can see ourselves in that wholeness, then it begins to click. Okay, then yeah, I am part of the divine. I am an expression of the divine, because it's all of that. And so I think the key to cracking this code, the key to really unlocking this understanding is, like we've said before, is authenticity. Now, when we can show up each and every day authentically, we actually become this activating presence of spirit. And so, spirit is not just activated when we show up on a good day, or when we, stuff all of our stuff in a closet and then show up as our spiritual selves. The depth and breadth of the divine is not expressed in that. The depth and breadth of the divine is expressed in each and every part of who and what we are. And that means, whether we like it or not, the key is showing up authentically. And sometimes that's hard. It's hard to be vulnerable. It's hard to risk. It's hard to step out. It's hard to share our hopes and our passions and our dreams and those inner workings of ourselves. It's hard to show that because we don't know how that's going to be received. But in essence, when we can do that, when we make the intention, when we set the vision to do that in each and every aspect of our lives, it is then that we really tap into this understanding of wholeness. And it is then that we can actually truly see ourselves for what we are, which is the individualized expression of the one, that we begin to see those qualities in ourselves. And you know what happens then? We begin to see them in other people. And then we begin to actually actively look for those expressions in ourselves, and then actively look for those qualities in each other. And just imagine the transformative experience that we would have when we set that intention each and every day to see within us the divine, and to see in each and every person that we meet, see that sparkle of the divine that's in them. And it would transform how we see ourselves, it would transform how we see each other, and it would ultimately transform how we move and operate in the world. And it's then that we can tap into this personal transformation, this communal evolution, and this global understanding. Just imagine the power. And it just starts with a shift in our own being, a shift in our own way of seeing ourselves, a shift in our own way of showing up authentically. And then we allow others to do the same. And it becomes a domino effect. And then we can see spirit in everything.
Seeing spirit in everything except for Steve. That guy really gets me. Oh.
Screw Steve. We just made that up. I don't know who Steve is. If your name is Steve.
I picked the name of somebody that I really don't have any connection with right now. So.
That's
funny. You take their personal.
Yeah, right. Bad comments. I just want to props out there for anyone who has gotten to the point of attempting to see the divine as the all that there is, as themselves, as part of that, and seeing all that stuff still show up in your life and not wanting to claim it because it sucks and you don't like it, and still trying to be like, okay, there's only one and I'm part of that, right? Like that in and of itself is like massive steps. Right. Yeah. That to be in that place, to be honest enough to look at the things that you don't like about your life and still trying to recognize it as part of the all that there is, to really understand wholeness, because I think it's really easy to not want to own that stuff, to not want to look at that stuff, to just kind of like, oh, it'd be so much easier if we could just ignore it and it would go away and fix itself on its own. Can we just do that? So yeah, like props to anyone who's there, who's doing that and looking at that. And, yes to everything you said after that. Like, yeah, that is the way to wholeness. And when we can come around to seeing all of that stuff as part of the all that there is, and that it is somehow still then actually working for us, like that's a whole new take on life.
Well, it's a thing about language again. Like, I think that I had this long time ago, had this idea when you say wholeness, it meant like without without cracks or without, this perfect, like whole, completely healed sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so, and I don't know necessarily if that was something that was preached to me or somehow I absorbed it or took it on, but that was my understanding of wholeness. And so when that's our understanding of wholeness, and then we try to like see like ourselves as, the individualized expression of spirit, well, that doesn't jive. It's kind of counterintuitive. And so I think it's the language of understanding wholeness does not mean without cracks. It actually probably means a little bit more cracks. It means
with all the cracks,
the totality of everything, the totality of experiences. I wonder if we should just change it to totality, the totality of it, because that gets a different sort of feel to it. But it is that spirit is not this stuff, but not that.
right?
Or, the universe isn't this stuff, but not that. Because in saying that, it then diminishes that.
Everybody but Steve.
Right. And so, oh, Steve. But, so I think that's that's where language does matter a little bit in how we see things. And for me, is when that clicked, it's like, oh, okay. It's not that I always do it, but at least can come back to it, after an hour or two of ruminating on the opposite of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's a lot of where really like that, that Buddhist saying comes too, that, that pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional, because it's when we're in denial or in resistance of, what's going on. Like, nope, that shouldn't be happening. That shouldn't be happening. Like it is happening. How, what are you going to do going forward? How do you want to manage it? How do you want to talk about it? Stuffing it down isn't going to help, or resisting it, pretending like it's not there.
Yeah.
That's where that, pain is in the resistance for sure.
Yeah. Give yourself 5 minutes to wallow in this sucks and shouldn't be happening. And then, or whatever, right? Like, yeah.
I had a therapist friend that said that, told her clients, like, yeah, those emotions, those things that we're experiencing, not to invalidate them by avoiding them, but like give yourself a time limit. So for 10 minutes, I'm going to wallow in the ridiculousness that is this present moment. And then after that, all right, now we're going to move into, something else. But like in even giving yourself that time and that space to feel what you're feeling, it does kind of like act as kind of a clearinghouse. It's like, okay, now I can like step in this direction or that direction. So just giving yourself space and time to do that.
And there's a certain empowerment in that too, right? Like there is this self-empowerment that you recognize this is not my, when we're in that moment, it's like, okay, this is not how I want it to go. This is what's happening. I'm going to acknowledge that. I'm going to feel what I want to feel. And then like, we almost get to a place where there's like a joy in allowing ourselves to experience like the full range of life, knowing that like, okay, 10 minutes from now or whatever I'm going to decide to, okay, this still is what it is. And now I'm going to take action. I'm going to do something different, or I'm just going to stop and breathe, or, whatever it is. Like, yeah, let's fully enjoy the suck.
Yeah. Mindful.
Yeah. And then do something different, make a different choice, may have a different thought, whatever that process is. Yeah.
And recognize that, it's a cycle, it's a up and down, and that as we move forward, we might have in a week from now another moment of that exact same thing, really wanting to be experienced as sucky again. Okay, go for it. Fully embrace the suckiness. And the more that you do that, then it seems to dissipate, as opposed to growing and festering when we try to ignore it.
Yeah.
Embrace the suck. Yeah. Well, thank you for spending some quality time with us tonight. And if you'd like to explore this topic a little bit further, join us in conversation on Thursday night. Now, this is an amazing opportunity to delve further into this week's topic and answer questions and just be together in this truly transformative experience. And you can find information about the gathering on our website, soulevolutioncollaborative.org. You can sign up there and get the link for that on Thursday at 7. So the Soul Evolution Collaborative is supported and made possible by people like you. And so if you'd like to help financially support this ministry, you can find the donate button at soulevolutioncollaborative.org. All donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. And so thank you so much for partnering with us in this thus far. And we're so excited for what this year has to hold for Soul Evolution Collaborative. So to stay up to date, visit our SEC website and sign up for email news and inspiration. So we'll see some of you on Thursday night at 7. And then for everyone else, we'll see you next week.